We'll do a review in Lekutis Sichas Chelk Tezayin, volume 16. This is the fifth Sicha for the portion of Vaira. The Rebbe gives here a very deep insight and analysis, seemingly from a statement, a disagreement Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva, how deeply did the Makkahs affect? And this depends on how deep the Tumah of Mitzrayim penetrated to figure out how deeply it affects. The Rebbe brings down also the different levels that something is affected as it comes out, like from the prohibition for Pesach, which is also a result of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and in addition to not eating and not benefiting, you're also not allowed to possess it. And the Rebbe goes on to bring various different points, and also in the service of Hashem, as we will see. We'll go step by step. Aleph. Benigeya de Makis what der Eberster hat gebracht auf die Mitzrim, as it pertains to the plagues that Hashem brought on the Egyptians, and then basically the first set of plagues, first 7 of them are recorded in this week's Parsha, in the portion of Vaira, is da plukta tzvishin Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva. So we find an argument between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Lezer says, and we say this also in the Haggadah, that kol makkah hoiso shel arba makkahs chulu, that every makkah consisted of 4 makkahs. So each individual makkah was 4 makkahs. And Rabbi Akiva says shel chamish makkahs, that each one consists of 5 makkahs. What does it mean, 4 or 5? What does it mean? The makkah was a makkah of 4, a makkah of 5. So, what is the teuchen von the 2 days shel arba und shel chamish? What is the idea behind these 2 opinions, whether it was 4 or 5? Is mavur in kolboy b'shem Bal HaMelamed. So it's explained in the kolboy, in the name of the Bal HaMelamed, as the plukta is that the argument is how deeply did the Makkahs penetrate into the matters that they plagued, whether it was just the combination, the superficial level, or it's deeper. Rabbi Lezer holds as the Makkahs that the Makkahs penetrated and have encompassed all the 4 elements of every item. Every item has 4 elements which make up the item. So when we say 4, meaning all 4 elements of the item were plagued. In welches is eine gewende Makkahs, in which the Makkahs took place in all 4 elements. Das heißt, what does this mean? The Makkah is given nicht nur in der Sach, wie sie ist schön am Murkof von alle 4 Yesoides. The Makkah did not just take place in an item as it is already put together from the 4 elements, that the combination of all the 4 elements in what we have, the item. But rather it reached even deeper. In der Etzem von jedem Yesoid, also in the essence of every element. Inside of the essence, each of the elements that make up these item, was is in der Sach, which is in this item. Und der Riber is ja der Makkah shel arba, therefore every Makkah was of 4. Say, for example, the Rebbe gives example the Makkah's dam. Uledukmo mit der Makkah's dam. So we'll give an example. The plague of dam is geschlagen geworden, that was smitten, nicht nur the Wasser, wie das setzt sich als Metzias von Mayim. Not only the water, and it appears as water, as an existence of water, nor euch der Eish Ruach v'Ofer shebemayim. But in addition, the fire element, the Ruach element, and the Ofer element that is in the water, the other 3 elements that are from the part of the 4 Yesoides, they too were smitten. That explains 4. What's 5? Rabbi Akiva tutoif nochmer. So Rabbi Akiva comes up and with a even bigger novelty. As the Makkah is given in them Chomer Hiyuli, that the Makkah was also in the Chomer Hiyuli. Yuli means in the potential, which in the Rebbe's Ha'orah, it explains the various different meaning. What is exactly the Hiyuli, that potential, that level in which it's before even as it spreads out into the 4 elements in its deeper level of existence before it brings about the 4 levels. So Rabbi Akiva holds that even in the Chomer Hiyuli, in the Hiyuli material from der Zach, at that level, was is poshut oisgiton from dem Zier von the Daled Yisoidus. At that point, it is undressed. It doesn't have yet the formation, doesn't have the shape of any of the 4 elements. It's beyond the 4 elements. There is a level of the potential where it all comes from. That's a deeper level of the existence of, say, by the water, the Chomer Hiyuli of the water. According to that, it turns out, as Yeder Makkah is given Shel Chomesh, that every Makkah was of 5, which is in the Daled Yisoidus, in the 4 elements, and only in Chomer Hiyuli and in the Chomer Hiyuli. So this is the explanation of the Kolbei, and this explains what the differences of the opinion is between the different opinions. So basically, we see that according to all opinions, the plague, which was to destroy Mitzrayim, went beyond the surface as it is just in its form presently, but rather it touched a deeper level, base. The Mekuvan in the Makis is given. What was the point, the intent of the plagues? Kishmon, as the name, it's called Makis, is Sushlogun und zu brechen Mitzrayim, to beat and to break Egypt. Therefore is verstandig. From here we understand, from that we understand, as der Inyan Hanal, this above concept, those was the Makis haben durchgedrungen, die Dvorim Hamukim, this that the plagues penetrated these matters that were beaten is Aleph, number 1, Leid Beide Deis is just given, according to both opinions, that was not in them Gilu, it wasn't only in the revealed, in their Zach Vizet as the matter as you see it, not in them Helem und Etzem, but also in the hidden and the essence of the matter. Base. So that's number 1. So we all know, according to both opinions, it went further than just the surface. But the Tzvei Deis now, the 2 above mentioned opinions, Tzidos is given Oich in dem Chomer Hiyuli, whether it also went as far as the Chomer Hiyuli, or the not in dem Chomer, or just in the Chomer, Verhoche Natzir for the Daled Yisoidus, as it has the formation already of the 4 elements, is Dostoloi. That depends how deep the tomb of Mitzrayim went and how much we needed to smite over there. Is Dostoloi that hinges a Viful Tumas Mitzrayim Hates Durginomen. How much did the impurity of Egypt penetrate, take through it all? Was behesem l'shir zeh, as fitting to that amount that the Tumah Mitzrayim has penetrated, zani gekumen the makas sumavat zayin the Tumah. So then the plagues came to negate, to nullify this Tumah. So the Rebbe will now bring that this idea, how much a object gets infected by the Tumas Mitzrayim, all the way till the Chomer Yuli, or not, is also, we can learn it from a halacha to the extent that Chometz and Pesach is prohibited, which fits with these views that we have discussed. Gimel. That Inyan Hanal, the above mentioned idea, as Tumas Mitzrayim, had the greich dem etzem for Metzius Advorim, that the impurity of Egypt reached the essence of the matters, of the existence of these matters, that it penetrated and therefore needed to be smitten even on this hidden deep level, beyond the revealed level. Und die Oibengebrachte plucked in them, and then we bring this agreement between the two, between Rabbi Yisaglin and Rabbi Akiva, whether it was only in the elements or even as far as the Chomer Yuli. Spiegel Tzachop, this mirrors the Ali Inyone Agoda and Pnimis HaTorah, which all aspects of Agoda that we learn in the Agoda part of Torah and the inner part of Torah, the Torah also in the revealed part of Torah. Biz in Halacha, to the extent that it also comes out in a law, in the law. In them Teuchen va'oifuna isur chometz, in the idea and how chometz is prohibited. Now, the prohibition of chometz comes as a result of the miracle of Pesach. That was a consequence, a result of the Tumas Mitzrayim. And when the Yidden left Mitzrayim and they made the matzah and chometz, the Eibishter told them about the prohibition of chometz. So that prohibition of chometz, which resulted from the Tumas Mitzrayim, halachically we can see the significance and how it fits in with the two opinions that we learned how much the makkos penetrated. That Isur chometz, the prohibition of chometz, is nit nor ba'achilo b'hano. It is not only eating and benefiting. Most prohibitions are either only prohibited to be eaten or also prohibited not even to benefit. But chometz is also addition to that, but it cannot be seen and cannot be found. And because of that, you cannot be in existence, not only not to benefit, eat it a bit, but not even possess it. That brings the additional mitzvah of removing the chometz, birur chometz. Und bringt euch dem chiva mitzvah from birur chometz, and brings also the mitzvah of removing the chometz. So this three ideas of asur ba'achila, b'hanoah, and also not possessing correspond and can be connected to the prohibition as the item is in front of us, like the makkah would be just in the finished product, which is the water. That's achila. Hanoah would be the level that is even beforehand, the elements that make up the food. And not possessing is the Chomer Yuli. As you see, the Rebbe will bring it out. The chiluk zwischen the drei inyonim hanal, the difference between these three above mentioned inyonim, which is isur achila, the prohibition of eating, isur hanoah, the prohibition of benefiting, bal yiro, bal yimotze, not to be seen or found, ubir, and to remove it, the chometz, is, so what's the difference? The shayches fun achila v'isura mit davar hanechel, the connection, when you say that you can't eat it, eating or the lack of it or the prohibition of eating is the connection with davar hanechal is mitzayin tzura. That is connected to the item that you're eating with the shape that it's present. The der dover hanechal steht in atzir gormur, as the item that is eaten is standing in a complete shape. He is now fully bis zu sein roi lachila. Now it's fit to be eaten. So when you say a prohibition or a connection of eating with the item, that refers to as the item is complete and it's fit to eat him, that means that he has this full shape as it is. As it is. Unit mit sein choimer v'edis bifnei atzmai. It doesn't connect with the material as it's by itself before it is formed into an edible item. Mit netzem hametzias from Dover HaMeichel, with the essence of the existence of the food. Now, when we talk about the next step, benefiting the hanoah v'isura, to benefit and its prohibition, von der Sach, is verbunden euch mit der Etzem von der Sach. That is also tied with the essence of the matter, not only as it is revealed, already made, but also in the essence. The Rebbe explains that. We can see, Bados is einer von the Biurim. This would be one of the explanations. Wie kann sein azach soll sein osur b'achila mutar b'hano? How could there be such a thing? It is prohibited to be eaten, and yet you can benefit from it. The l'chayre would seem, oib the zach hot in zichra un isur, if this item has bad, evil in it, and prohibition, ba'zoi megmen hanom hoben from the isur dike zach. So how are you allowed to benefit from this prohibited matter? Okay, you're not eating it, but you're benefiting. But if it's bad, if it's advar isur, you can't eat it, how come you can benefit from it? Why should you be allowed to benefit? Nor the beer in them is kenal. The explanation is I said above. Isur achila, when you say that you can't eat meint, what it means is, as the ra is nor in suras v'chitzonis hadover. That means that the evil encompasses only the shape and the externality of the item. Can't eat it. Dos was macht roi lachila. That's what makes them fit to be eaten. The final stage, as it is a food. Und der Liber is as mutter b'hano. And that's why you're allowed to benefit. Because in the material and the essence of the matter, which relates to benefiting, is nitokin ra. There is no ra over there. So therefore, hanoah, you can have hanoah, because that the extension of the ra doesn't extend to the etzem hadover, to the hanoah part. It only extends to the full shaped, completed item, which is to eat, but not in benefit. But yet, the Rebbe says, while it's not directly, but it still has a connection to the finished product. But also benefiting in the prohibition, bald der Verbund is durch benutzen sich mit der Sach. How are you connected to this item? You use it. You either eat it, which is achila. You benefit it, meaning you're not eating it, but you're using the item. You're still using it. Was das is dafke wenn es is choimer betzura mesuyemes. That can only be, it is a material, has a certain shape, which is hanoah shape, not achila shape, but there's some shape there. Is dos gufa abavai, so that alone points is a proof that is as this item already has a shape. That would be if it's osur b'hanoah. By chometz ober kum tzudar isur, but by chometz, however, there adds the isur as torzich nit gefinnen in reshus von ayid. It's not allowed to be found in the possession of a yid. You're not even using it. You can't possess it. Even without any use of the chometz. This haste, So what does this mean? As der Isur hat durchgenommen dem Chomer ve'etzem hadover, that the prohibition and that you're not allowed to even possess it means that the prohibition has encompassed and penetrated the chomer ve'etzem hadover, the material and the essence of the matter, where is ausgeton von eze zu as it's undressed in any form and shape. It's just in its purest of the essence. You can't even possess without using, because their far is their yemotze. And that's why if it's just inexistent, it is found, it's possessed, the etzem faranakai, just being there, from the Muhammad's in Zayin Rishus, it is awesome. So you see, Achila had to do with the full shape as it's fully food. Hanoah has to do not fully, but it's still connected to food because there has to be some use, meaning there is a connection to the item as it's forming and making of the item. But when it comes to the Isur of Yemotze, it means it's not allowed to be found, meaning even without any use, just the existence of this item is Usur, because that already poses a prohibition just in its essence. And then the Rebbe brings down a machloikis with regards what to do, how to get rid of the chametz, and the Rebbe explains that these two ways of getting rid of the chametz, as the Ragachover explains, fit with the two opinions how much the Makis war, how much the got to get rid of this chametz, and they fit together, as Rebbe will explain. Dalet, in their mitzvah from biur chametz is the aplukta. There's a disagreement how one fulfills the mitzvah of getting rid of the chametz. We said you're not allowed to possess it. So how do I get rid of the possession of the chametz before Pesach? So there is a plukta, there is a disagreement between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. What you do with the chametz in order to get rid of it, not to possess it. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer ein biur chametz ela sreifa. Rabbi Yehuda says can't get rid of chametz but burning it. You burn it, that's so that you no longer have the existence of chametz. The Chachamim say they disagree. They say af mefarer v'zoyre l'ruach hamat l'yam. You can also crumb it up and throw it to the wind, or throw it into the ocean, or getting rid of it so that you can't get hold of it, but you don't have to make it non-existent by burning it. So we'll see that Ragachover explains the idea between Rabbi Yehuda says burning it, or the Chacham Mefarer Zohar L'Ruach. Is that Ragachover masbir dem tam haplukta. Ragachover explains the reason for this argument. Loit Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, darf man mashbir sein dem etzem mitzias von dem chametz. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you need to destroy the essence of the existence of the chametz. That's why you need to burn it. Because if you just scatter it and you throw it out to the wind, the existence of chametz remains. It's just scattered. As opposed to the view of the Chachamim, they're of the opinion as is genug that it's sufficient when you negate and you do away and you destroy the toyar, the shape from the chametz. What is the toyar of the chametz? If you take away the possibility Benemt zu die Efshorius. As a Mensch soll kennen essen oder no haben von dem chametz. If you take away the possibility that any human being should be able to eat or benefit of this chametz, once you scatter it to the wind or you throw it into the ocean, so the shape of the chametz is no longer there, while the essence may still be there, but nobody can use it. Nobody need it. They need the toyar in order to eat it. Und das wird aufgetan, so this is accomplished also when you crumb it up and you throw it into the wind. We'll move on. So it's understood. Why do we need to get rid of the essence mitzias according to Rabbi Yehuda and according to the Chachamim? It's sufficient to get rid of the toyar so that nobody can use it. We don't need to get rid of the essence. That would depends how much the Isur penetrated the chametz. If it penetrated in the essence of his existence, then you got to get rid of it. But if it only penetrates the toyar, the shape which is potential to be eaten, and you get rid of that, that'll be sufficient. We'll move on. So it's understood that those gufa, that this alone, the shir from hashbosa, what is the amount of getting rid, is tolu yaviful that isur chometz nem dur dem davar isur, that hinges on how much this prohibition of chometz penetrates the isur matter. Oib der isur der greift euch die etzemetzias, if the isur reaches also the essence, darf der hashbosa sein ad kedei kach, then you have to destroy it to such an extent as the etzem mitzias from the chametz on bottle werden, that the essence, existence of chametz should be taken away, negated. If the isur der gerecht euch the etzem mitzias, if the isur reaches also the essence of the existence, darf der hashbosa sein ad kedei kach, then the destruction, destroying the chametz, needs to be to the extent as the etzem mitzias from chametz on bottle werden, that the essence of the existence of the chametz should become nullified. Und oib der isur rirt on nor dem toyar v'tzura, if the prohibition only touches and reaches the shape and the description, is genug to mashbi sein the tzura, then it's sufficient to get rid of the tzura, the shape. You throw it out in the ocean, there's no more shape. The efshorish of achilevano, you can no longer the possibility of eating or benefiting. Unitam etzem, and not the essence. You don't have to get rid of the essence because the Isur never expanded into the essence. While the name is Netoken Isur. Because in the essence, there is no Isur. That's the two opinions between Rabbi Yehuda, as explained by the Ragachover, in burning the chametz or even getting rid of it by throwing it away. Or in the ruach, getting rid that nobody should be able to eat it. So we can say as the tzvei deyes eine behesem the tzvei shittas for Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva binyan hamakas, that these two opinions of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yitzchak literally fit with the two opinions, the two views of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva with regards to the makas. Rabbi Lezer was zokt, Rabbi Lezer who says as kol mako chulu shalar ba makas, that each plague consists of 4 makis, as the makis seinen nor given in the zach, wie hat schon dem Ziel von Daladi Soides, that the plagues only went to the item as it already shaped by the 4 elements, is kishitas chachomim. That is like the view of the chachomim, af mefarer v'zoyel ruachulu, that you can also scatter and throw it out to the wind. As men darf nor mevair sein the metzias von the chametz, you only need to get rid of the existence of the chametz, wie es is verbunden mit dem toyar v'tzura, as it is already associated, connected to the shape and the description von chametz. The efshoris of achilevano, the possibility of achilevano, you got to get rid of that, because that is only the extent and where it expanded to. Und das Rabbi Akiva v'chazok das kol makah chulu shel chamesh makos, and Rabbi Akiva's opinion, who says it was all of 5 makos, which means the makos seinen euch given in chomer ha'iyuli, that the plagues also affected the A Yuli material is those Vaira halt kishitas Rabbi Yehuda is because he is like Rabbi Yehuda's view. And bir chometz al sreifa, they have to burn it. So that means you have to get rid of the entire existence even before any shape, and that's why he says it was chamish makas, because that was where the plague needed to take place, because that is where the expanded of the Tumas Mitzrayim. Now, the Rebbe is going to now extend this even further with regards to within Hanoah itself. And the Rebbe is going to say there's two levels in the of Asur Bahanoah, how far it reaches of Asur Bahanoah. There's some Hanoah which brings the person some benefit, at least some benefit. There's also a benefit. There's also Hanoah which doesn't bring the person any benefit to him, such as feeding chametz to dogs of hefker. He doesn't get any benefit from it. It's hefker. Are you allowed to do that? And the Rebbe is going to bring out that is also associated with this difference, how much the isser of chametz penetrates. But in this case, since it's also Rabbi Yossi Haglili, it'll fit very well into the other discussion of how far the plagues went. I mean, the 4 or 5, or even just the plagues itself. Let's see. Hey, the dogma to the tzvei fanim in bir chometz, similar to these two ways of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, Rabbi Yehuda, and the Chachamim, how you burn the chometz, benegeya them etzem metzias from chometz, as it pertains about the essence of the chometz. See whether Torah ge'ased etzem metzias, the Torah prohibit the actual essence of the existence, even visi is oizgiton from welcher es is tzura, as it's undressed in any kind of shape, just the essence of the chametz itself. Even if you can't use it, it's still prohibited, and you got to burn it. Or the Torah only prohibited that existence that is associated, connected, tied to the description. Those was the zachis royu lahanoah, the fact that it's fitting to be benefit, and once you get rid of that, so there's no benefit, that's okay. There's also similar to this tzvei fanim, two ways in the Isur Hanoah Gufa, in the prohibition of benefiting itself. Which also points to the idea tzidara is tifer in them toyer hadover, whether the ra, the bad, the Isur, is deeper than just in the description. According to a deeper prohibition in Hanoah, points to the fact that it's more than just Hanoah that is associated with the Toyar, but an essence Isur. You have the two types of Hanoah. Aleph, one Hanoah is Hanoah, was is maybe lidei shum achilo. It's a Hanoah that brings to some sort of eating. What does it mean? Any time that you benefit, it's a value. And then that value, what do? You buy food with it. That means it brings for some sort coming to some consumption of the item. Maybe not from this item itself, but with the money that you got, you can buy. While stam hanoes lidei achila hem bois, because generally when we talk about benefiting, eventually it comes to eating. He buys with the money, a food object, as the Rebbe brings down the order from Rashi. Was in a breiter zin, in a wider sense, it does koilul yeder hanoah was der mensch hot der baya fardins. This includes any benefit that the person benefits from it. It's a no that there's some gain. There's a gain to the person. If there's a gain, there is a hana that brings the achila. Ubemela is a smevili de shumachila. Therefore, it brings to some eating. Shalokech bedomim dvar Michael. He buys with the money and a food item. That's one. But then there is a second hanoah which has nothing to do with any benefit at all. It doesn't bring to eating. Beis ahishtamshus was the mensch hot nid davon kein shum verdient. A use that the person has nothing. He doesn't earn anything. It doesn't gain him anything. Ledugma, as for example, Michael Zaydem Devar Isur Lekalbe Hefker, to feed this Isurdike item to dogs that belong to Hefker. Was in them is Nishaych zu sagen, as die Hano bringt de Achila. Over here, it doesn't really fit to say that that benefit brings to food. You don't get anything out of it. There's no earning. There's no gain there. In Yerushalmi is da plukta. In the Yerushalmi, there is a disagreement about feeding chometz to dogs of hefker. Ein man dover halt sie is mutter. According to one opinion, says that's permissible. Und a zweiter man dover halt, and a second opinion holds as der posik veloy yeyochel chometz, says chometz shall not be eaten, is marbe includes, adds, asert oich would also prohibit the ishtamshus, the use for Michael Zaydem chometz lekalbe hefker, to feed, and the use of chometz even for dogs that are hefker. So these two possibilities, the two opinions, we can explain along the same lines as before, depending how far the Isur of chometz penetrated. Did it only penetrate the level of a use that can come to the description, or a deeper level, the essence of the chametz itself? Kemen zogen azoich die plukte is verbunden. That also this disagreement is tied with the shaila, with the question of wieviel is der isur chametz verbunden mit chaymer ve'etzem adover. How much is the prohibition of chametz tied with the material and the essence of the matter, not only to what it leads to connecting to the description, to the tzura, to the eating or the benefiting of it. If the prohibition rests on the item itself, nor a viful as hot, only to the extent in which it's associated to the description, to the shape, then is there isur hanoah, then the prohibition of benefiting was is verbunden mit netzem hadover canal, which is associated with the item itself. Mugbal, it's limited lois to the hanoes, only to those benefits was hob mashayches to misrachila that have a connection to the prohibition of eating. Maybe lideshumachila, they bring to some eating. Ober oib der isur is shoyreif etzem hadover. But if the prohibition rests on the item itself, as it has no connection to any form or shape, damult is just the essence also. Damult is the isur hanoah an isur mitzad atzmei. Then the prohibition of hanoah is an independent, it's an own. Which would include any form of use. Even some that doesn't bring you to any eating, that would still be awesome. So now the Rebbe says, so we can say the two opinions, Dosvos Rabbi Yosef Glili Zokt. Rabbi Yosef Glili, he says, and he says before we have the two opinions of he's brought down before the two opinions for Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Lezer said 4, and Rabbi Akiva said 5. And before we say 4 or 5, how many makas there was of each one, 4 or 5, you bring down what Rabbi Yisrael said. He says, "Minayin shaloka hamitzrim b'mitzrayim," and how do we know nor eser makas? So there wasn't more than the eser makas. Not each one consists of 4 or 5, like Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Akiva. He says, "Minayin sheloko hamitzrim mitzrayim nor eser makas v'alayom loko chamishi makas." Over there it says etzba elikim, so it's 1 finger in Mitzrayim, and over there it says Yod HaChazoka. Yod is 5 fingers, but it's only 10 and 50, not multiplied by 4 or by 5, 200 or 250, as we'll read in the Haggadah, that it comes out according to the other Mandomars, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva, that it consists of more, is vitally shitosei, according to the view of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, is chometz muter bahanoah. So, according to him, chometz is permissible to benefit. So therefore, there is taken no isur in hanoah itself, and therefore there is no more than the actual achila, which is the full. And this was only 10 and 50. There's no more than that. Those bavais kinal as the isur chometz is not in Torah dava. That points that the isur chometz is just in description of the matter. Ubenegeya to tumas mitzrayim, and how does it show by the tumas mitzrayim vaistes as es hat angerit nor dem toyer v'chitzonis hadvorim, that it was only able to touch the description, the externality of the matters, what's eating, that's osur. Ubemele is yeder makkah given. So each of these makkah was only not in their metzias hadvorim, only in the way the things find themselves, as they are already combined, and there is the combination of all the 4 elements. That's osur b'achila, but not the isur hanoah at all, because according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, the tuma only presented in the externality as it is a food, and that's why Rabbi Yossi Haglili says the makas was only on 10 makas and not more than that, because there was no combination of any additional the yisoidis or the yuli, as according to the other opinions. Now, the Rebbe is going to associate also these ideas with the number of exiles. Sometimes we count Mitzrayim as one of the 4 exiles, and sometimes we don't. Vav, Apia Amor Le'il, Siv Beis, based on what we said earlier, Siv Beis, as the plukta from Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva. Now, what is the disagreement between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva? 4 or 5 makis is tolu yeviful tumas Mitzrayim. How much the impurity of Egypt was penetrated the land of Egypt, and that which was in it. We can explain the reason from the medrashis chalukis, from the different medrashim, benegeya the daled goliyis, as connected to the 4 exiles. In most places, werd Golus Mitzrayim nit gerechnet zwischen the Daled Malchios and Golios. We don't count the exile of Egypt amongst the 4 governments and exiles that the Jewish people went through. And the reason given for that, because it's equal to all of them, and it's more than them. And that's why he is not included amongst the other 4, because that's on a higher level. It's greater and more than all of them. On the other hand, however, there are places where Mitzrayim wird gerechnet zwischen, that Mitzrayim is counted amongst und als the erste von, and as the first of the Daled Malchios V'Golios, of the 4 governments exiled and the exiles. So we can say as is that these two views, do we count it or not, seine verbunden mit dem Chiluk-Kanal, they are associated, they're tied to the above mentioned difference. How much did the impurity of Egypt take through, infiltrated and into the land of Mitzrayim? The Bir explanation of this. Der Tambos Mitzrayim werd bereva mekoimis, nid der Mond zwischen the Dalad Malchus v'Golius. The reason why Egypt in most places is not mentioned amongst the four governments in exile is while the Dalad Malchus v'Golius, because the four governments and exiles are in Neged Dalad Eisies Havaya, they correspond to the four levels of the name of Hashem Yudke Vovke. Ungolus Mitzrayim, and the exile of Mitzrayim is Neged, that corresponds to the Koitzer Shel Yud, the point that is on top of the Yud. Based on that, what is known also as the Dalad Yisoidus, that the four elements, Hem Dalad Oisies Havaya, are the four letters of the name of Hashem, Yudke Vovke. Koitzer Shel Yud, and when we have the point of the Yud, Keser is Dugmas HaChomer HaKodem HaNikra Hiyuli, that is similar to the earliest material, which is called the Chomer Hiyuli. Kumtoisus turns out, the Daled Goliath Zayin Neged the Daled Yisoidus, that the four exiles correspond to the four elements. Golus Mitzrayim, and the exile of Egypt, that angeriert euch dem Chomer Hiyuli, it touched also the Chomer, which is the Hiyuli. Und die Maimore Resalvo Mitzrayim werden Mond zwischen the Daled Malchis, those saying of our sages, in which Egypt is mentioned amongst the four nations, the four governments, is dos lemad de Omar as Mitzrayim is neged bechinas chochma. That goes according to the opinion that Mitzrayim corresponds to the level of chochma, which is the Medrash Hanel. Und afal pi as euch loid der deya is Mitzrayim der shoydish von alle Goliaths, that even if we say that it's neged chochma, it's still the root of all Goliaths, is ober ha-shoydish was is koilo de alle Goliaths, that's a shoydish that includes all the Goliaths. Und loid der deya hat klippes Mitzrayim angeriert. According to that opinion, the clip of Egypt only touched, affected, not in them Chomer was in them Tzir von Daled Yisoidus, only the place, the shape where there is the four elements, and that's why Mitzrayim is part of the four elements level of Chochmah, and that's why it's counted amongst the four, as opposed to the ones who don't count it. It's the level of Koitzer Shel Yud, which is the higher level, and that, according to them, that touched that as well, the Chomer Yuli, and that will be the higher level. Zayin, that Inyan from Golus Vitzias Mitzrayim is Eich Do in Avodah Ruchnis. The idea of exile and the exodus of Egypt that we're talking about, how much the miracles took place and where they touched and how effective, but it also exists in Avodah Ruchnis, in the spiritual service. Mitzrayim is from Loshen Mitzorim Ugvulim. Mitzrayim comes from the language limitation and boundaries. Mates are making it in a limited, and to make boundaries. Golus Mitzrayim, what does it mean? Exile of Mitzrayim meant, it means as the Avodah von Eden, that the service of Eden is mitagavul. It's with a limit. Medida vagbol. It's measured and limited. On Yitzias Mitzrayim, what does it mean to go out of Egypt? Is Basar Geita Roish Baveidosoi, that through his service he leaves and he goes out from Allah Medidas Vagbolis, from all measurements and all limitation. Oich from the Hagbolis for Nefesh Alikis, also from the limitations of the godly soul. Und them is the plukta zwischen Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva, and here we have the disagreement between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva. Tzid the makis, seine given not in the Daled Yisaitis, whether the plagues were only in the four elements, or the Eichit Chomer Hiyuli, also in the material of the Hiyuli. What does it mean spiritually? Ti as fordert sich die Avoide von Yitzias Mitzrayim. Do we necessary? Is it required in the service of going out of Egypt, not in the Eser Koiches HaNefesh, only in the 10 powers of the soul, was tellen sich in 4 Sugim, which divide in 4 categories. Keneged Daled Oisvis Shem Havaya. In the 4 letters of the name of Havaya. And there you have to go out of Mitzrayim, which is what are the 4 categories? Aleph is Avoida Bepoil B'machshove Dibur Maisa. In the actual service of Hashem, thought, speech, and action, which is the Sfiras HaMalchus, over there you need to go out of Mitzrayim. That's number 1. The number 2 base is B'midas. That's the emotions. Emotionally go out of Mitzrayim. Zo. Gimel, that's B'seichel, intellectually going out, which is Bina. Und Daled, Mesidas Nefesh, which is the level of Chochmah. Other, that would be 4. Other, or also perhaps in the level of Yechida in the soul, versus Bedugma to Chomer Hiyuli. That is similar to the Chomer Hiyuli. Rabbi Elazar holds as Kol Mako Chulu Shel Arba Makas. It's a 4 Makas, which means Dar Zayin the Avodah for Yitzias Mitzrayim. You need to have the service of going out of Egypt. In alle 4 Sugim from Koiches HaNefesh, in all 4 categories of the powers of the soul. Arois came from the Hagbolos from Yedin Fuzei to go out of the limitation of each one of them. Shav Dibur Maisa, Midas, Seichel, and Chochmah Mesidas Nefesh. The niedrigste Reifen is, the lowest level is, the Medida Vagbola in Zayn Milchemes HaYetzer. The lowest level being in Golus and being in Mitzrayim is the limitations and the measured how much you wage war with the Yetzer. Was bringt him to Eiver Zayn Rachmona Litzlan, which brings him to violate, God forbid, b'maisa, b'dibru machshava, in action and in speech and in thought, b'poil, in actuality. I'll call upon him. And minimally, he fails in ways of his surim was verlangen amelchama gedele v'atzuma v'chulu, but those prohibition which require a tremendous, big, and powerful war, he doesn't overcome that. That's the lowest way of Mitzrayim. Amer dak is the goyfer in Mitzrayim, a more refined way of Egypt. Is as choch is nizar betachlis from over zayin advar isur, even though he is careful totally not to violate a prohibited matter. I feel like the not even a light importance of the rabbis. So he's careful; he doesn't violate anything. He's aber seinen Hogin Yone Heter, but then his conduct in items that are permissible in an oifum was is zugepasst to anochas oilam. It's in a way that it fits to the psychological acceptance of the world, going by the culture and the accepted world of men. As by yeter zag was tut. So everything that he does, by ort, it takes up space. He's concerned. What are the people going to say? That kind of conduct, where does it come from? Was is mugbal loid zain hergish from the welt arumem, that he's measured and limited according to his feeling of the world around him. In seine Midas, in his own emotions, was filun rechnen sich mit dem Arum, that feel and take into consideration what goes on around him. He is in Mitzrayim, and he's feeling. That's an emotional Mitzrayim, that he feels that he has to answer and he has to fit in. Then you have a feel when I get you that from die Medidas v'agbolas for the Welt. Even when he goes out from these Medidas and limitation, the measured and limited the world arum sich, kann aber noch als bleiben zugebunden. He still can remain tied to the agbolas from sein eigener Metzias, to the limitation of his own existence. Sein Aveda is nor al pitam vadas. His service, this is the intellectual Mitzrayim. It's only according to his reason, understanding, with the seichel, with the coldness of his seichel. That's the third level. That's seichel, the gimel. The hechste darge wo man darf bewohnen the avoida von Yitzias Mitzrayim, the highest, the most level that you need to caution, that you need to go out of Mitzrayim, the das Rabbi Lezer, according to Rabbi Lezer, is in the avoida for Mesiras Nefesh, Chochma Shebenefesh. That fourth level. That is take over Hashem, the Ma'ila Mitam V'das. He's take serving Hashem beyond the reason and beyond rationale. Aber noch alt mit Abedida v'Hagbola, but still there is a measure and there's a limitation. Aderech with the Rebbe had erzählt. It's similar that the Rebbe related. Wegen einem was hat beim Leinen Kriya Shema. Somebody who was, when he was saying the Shema, Meirich gewen in Echad, he took a long time saying Echad because of all the concentration. Sich misbeinen gewen in Echad, he reflected in the word Echad. Und hat später gesagt, and later on he said, at this point hat sich gezeugen bald eine Minute. So in German, he said that the meditation took just about 1 minute. A limited Mesiras Nefesh. It's limited by the clock, by the minute. Er hat sich vertieft in der Hisbonenus von Echad. He deeply went into the meditation, reflection of Echad. Was in Yone is Mesiras Nefesh, which concept is self-sacrifice. At the same time, he was able to look on the clock, on the watch, und ausrechnen the Zeit, and then he can figure out the time, was gestanden in der Tenua for Mesiras Nefesh. Oh, this is when I was standing in that movement of Mesiras Nefesh, but it was a minute. Or der Bedakesheser, even in a more refined way, by him is nor do der Hergish. By him is noch do der Hergish. He still has a sense as a private Mesiras Nefesh, that he is doing Mesiras Nefesh. Was das beweist, dass is noch nicht legamre arois from Didas v'agbolos from the Metzias. This points to the fact that he has not totally left the measurement and the limitation for his existence. Ches. That's the four level. If them two Teuf Rabbi Akiva, as kol makir chulu shel chomesh makis, there was 5 makis. Rabbi Eliezer is al shem elikei avi be'ezri. Eliezer is called his name Eliezer because he said that the elikei avi be'ezri ve'atzileni mecher parei, that Moshe named him Eliezer. But Rabbi Eliezer was Ben Hurkanus. Und Ben Avram Yitzchok ve'Yaakov was hat gehad dem Ezer von Elikei Avi. Also, Avram Yitzchok, Elikei Avi Avram, Elikei Avi Yitzchok, they had that. It was a Ben Hurkanus and a Ben Avram Yitzchok ve'Yaakov, which had the Elikei Avi. Was the Vaira sich bei ihm nicht abgelegt And therefore, he did not make sense to him. As epes can orin the etzem funayin, that there's something that can touch the essence of a yid. Because even during the sin, it's still always, the essence is always with Hashem. So the first opinion, Rabbi Lezer, he doesn't only say about 4. There's no such a thing about the 5th level being in Golus, about the level of Yechida. Rabbi Akiva aber hat gestammt from Gedem. Rabbi Akiva came from converts. He spoke and he cautioned. Die welche me darf erst bringen, tachas kantra shchina, those who we first have to bring under the wings of the divine. Bedakus yeser. In a more refined way to say this is the Vaira un mikfirim yichidosi, that's returning the soul yichidosi from the level of kifirim, from those that are opposed, and even the yichida needs to be protected. The avodah zu mesaken sein dem etzem hanefesh, the service to fix the essence of the soul. Aber mitzad dem gufa kommt heraus, but from this itself, it turns out an ilu in zweiten kitzei, an advantage in the other end. As dafke durch dem wer die Yitzias Mitzrayim euch von der Darge, that dafke only then, specifically then, becomes the exodus of Egypt. Also, in that level, that you take everything out of Mitzrayim. As dafke durch dem wer die Yitzias Mitzrayim euch von der Darge, that you go out in Egypt also of that level, of the Yichidosi, from the Kvirim, from the lions that want to attack, even the level of Yichidosi. You go out of all the limitations and the measured that can be on the essence of the soul, durch der Langen in dem Etzem von Nefesh Elikis, by reaching in the essence of the godly soul, was hot nit kein Hagbolus, that doesn't have any limitation. And das bringt zu Yitzias Mitzrayim and alle Darges. This brings to the exodus of Egypt to in all levels. Ulegomra, and to finish the end, to complete to Yitzias Mitzrayim, from Mitzrayim to Golus Ha'achrei Megashmis, of this last Golus of Mitzrayim, physically out of Golus. Mitzrayim as the day you went out of Egypt, I will show you miracles. This is Mesichas. They'll base the Pesach Tovshin Yudalid and Achrin Shel Pesach Tovshin Chai.